Hello folks, my name is Mark and this is Mark's Movie Reviews. How you guys doing? And today we're going to review Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. So if you haven't seen it yet, please be aware this review will have spoilers. So right off the bat, I think this movie is an improvement over Man of Steel, which was also directed by Zack Snyder. And it actually seems to do a lot to address the criticisms that you see in Man of Steel. But still kind of falls a little short of the mark in a couple of areas. And I think, although it's very fun, it's very entertaining, it's also when compared to other recent superhero movies, right, kind of falls short a little. It's still somewhat mediocre, you know. So to start off, Batfleck, Ben Affleck nails it as Batman. I think that was something that everybody was going to be afraid of. You know, seeing the only other superhero movie he's ever been in was that really, really sad and pathetic Daredevil movie from 2003, you know. So I remember when he was first announced, all the people were speculating he's going to be horrible, he's going to have this stupid gravelly voice, blah, 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 blah. None of that, you know, none of that is anything you have to worry about. He absolutely nails it. He's I would say probably the best Batman we've seen on film. He's probably even better than Christian Bale. You know, I would even go that far. You know, the voice that he does it sounds a lot more natural. You know, he's not doing that gravelly kind of, you know, I am the hero that Batman Gotham needs. Like, none of that bullshit. You know, it's deeper, and they have they explain it in universe as having a voice changer, you know, and it actually sounds like a, you know, person, and it actually makes him look like somebody. It like when you see him in the suit with the voice thing, he doesn't look like Ben Affleck. It looks like somebody else completely, and I think that's pretty awesome. He's very physically imposing. Like the Batman suit in this is patterned after the Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, which if you haven't read it, it's one of the classic Batman graphic novel stories out there. It's, you know, that's basically what this entire movie is based on, right? The whole fight between Batman and Superman in the first place. But the suit that he wears it's just makes him look really bulky, but at the same time it doesn't have any body armor on it, like except for maybe like shin and arm guards. Like there's a part where he deflects a bullet with one of the arm guards, so he's got a little bit of armor, but it's mainly he's just like this huge kind of, you know, and it's a lot different than the Daredevil suit, which kind of made Ben Affleck look like this big beefy barrel of monkey shit, you know what I mean? Like that old suit he just looked all big, like in this candy ass fucking monkey suit jumping around. Like in this one, he looks like he'll kick your ass. I mean, he's just massive, right? There is a little bit of, you know, one of the criticisms I've seen is that he's too violent, which is like, well, he's Batman, you know, he's supposed to be beating people's asses, but in this movie, he, like, kills people. Like, that's kind of a departure from the character, I think, a little, you know, Batman is never supposed to fucking kill people, you know, like, in this movie, he uses guns. Not just in, you know, in the dream sequences, because there's like 15 dream sequences in this movie, but you know, he's actually like there's a part where, you know, he grabs a dude and the guy has a machine gun and he sweeps him around like this while he's firing and he's like shooting at people, and then the Batmobile, which looks awesome by the way, has machine guns in it. But, you know, he's just blowing people away. So and then he like stabs this guy, and you're like, damn, like it's really like it's brutal, number one. So I'm like watching the movie, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like breaking people's arms and shit. But then he's just straight up fucking murdering dudes. So I'm like, that's a little much. But they kind of explain that, you know, in universe. Apparently this is a gritty kind of older, you know, more jaded Batman who, like, after the death of Robin, kind of lost his mind and is now, like, gone, like, you know, really brutal. So they say that too. There's a shot in the trailer where you see the Robin suit with the Joker spray paint on it, you know, and also the Wayne Manor is like destroyed, you know, like burned and all that shit. So they allude to the fact that there's been some history here, and that's why Batman is so fucking brutal, right? But I don't know. I think it's a little much. I don't think Batman would like kill people. He'd beat them within an inch of their lives, maybe. But then there's another thing where he's like branding guys. Like he's got this brass knuckle thing, and he's like branding them with the bat symbol, and that seems a little much, And I understand that's what they were going for. They were going for a brutal kind of jaded sort of, I don't give a shit anymore Batman. But I think this is a little bit too much of a departure, and it almost makes it seem like an alternate universe story, like an Elseworld story or whatever that they call it in DC, right? Henry Cavill as Superman brings back his performance from Man of Steel, which if you haven't seen, you should definitely see before seeing this. Which is not to say he's a bad Superman. He's just very he always looks like he's unsure of himself, and I think that's one of the things they did on purpose in this movie. Like when I think Superman, I think, confidence, right? That's the big thing, that Superman is always like confident. He always knows the right thing to do. He always knows the right decision to make, whether or not he can actually pull it off or whatever. And in this movie, it seems like Superman is just sort of guessing, do I do this? Do I do this? I don't know. And I think that's what they were trying to get at. The whole theme of this movie is like, good versus evil, God versus Satan, right? And they use a lot of imagery, savior type imagery. Like there's a part where Superman's flying over this, there's these houses, and all these people are like in a flood, and he's like hovering over it like he's like some kind of god. And then there's another part where he saves this girl from a burning building, and all the people reach out and they're like touching him like this, like he's Jesus and shit, And so they definitely played up the whole like savior god angle for Superman here. And in fact, they contrast that against Batman. Like the first time you see Batman, he's like up in the corner of the room, like he's this fucking he's like a chupacabra kind of cryptid monster thing. And then when he leaves, he scuttles across the ceiling, and you can't really tell, And the cop that sees him goes, I saw it. It's like, I saw it. So they don't even know that Batman's like a person. They think he's some kind of fucking like Bigfoot type monster type thing, So they contrast that pretty well. But still, I mean, he doesn't, I can't really say like his performance, Henry Cavill, by the way, I can't really say it's bad. I mean, it's not bad. It's like he did good with what was written there. I just think the writing was a little more, it could have, I don't know, man. I mean, he just seems like at any given moment, he's just so indecisive, And I think that's the big contrast there. Like, I mean, like Superman is always supposed to be kind of like the leader of, of the DC universe, basically. He's always like the one that, when it comes down to like, what's right and what's wrong, he always knows, right? And I think they kind of took that out a little here and makes him look a little more human, I think. But at the same time, that's not Superman, you know what I mean? Gal Gadot, I think her name is, as Wonder Woman, does a very nice job. But I mean, she only really gets like 8 lines of dialogue through the whole thing, But I think it definitely left me interested to see her solo movie. When she just shows up at the end, they start playing her kind of theme, which, unfortunately is not the TV show theme, but that's okay. But, they play like her, like she's got some music behind her, which is all sort of like warrior Greek kind of warrior princess music and shit. And she goes and like fights the monster, and it definitely like, I was like, wow, if they make the Wonder Woman movie like this, then I definitely want to see it. One character I didn't like here was Lex Luthor, played by Jesse Eisenberg, I think. This portrayal of, this characterization of Lex Luthor, I think, is like not happening. He's very jittery, he's very kind of like jittery, and he's got like facial tics and shit like that, and he's like insane. And when I was watching him, what came into my mind was the Riddler. Really, like I looked at him like, this guy would make a really good Riddler. It seems like when I see him, it like, I don't know, it just doesn't, like this is a kind of a younger, more sort of millennial kind of like, you know, insane Lex Luthor. You know what I mean? Like Lex Luthor is supposed to be a guy who's always like 10 steps ahead of you and like is capable of kicking your ass himself, but doesn't do it because it's beneath him, and instead uses his money and power to just like crush people. You know what I mean? Like he's the kind of guy that, you know, if I wanted to murder your family, I could, but I won't kind of guy, you know? And this Lex Luthor that he plays is more like insane, kind of like wiping feces on the walls kind of Lex Luthor, which, I mean, that's what they were going for, and he does it really well, don't get me wrong. I mean, the guy, Jesse Eisenberg, he's a really awesome actor. You know, I just think that the way his character was written is just like, I don't know, just doesn't happen. And like I said before, like it's more like the Riddler, you know, someone who's just like bananas, like out there fucking totally bananas, like, you know, making some kind of really insane contrived plot to like, you know, fuck over superheroes. Whereas Lex Luthor wouldn't do that. Lex Luthor would just fucking like find the whatever weapon and just kill the bad guys himself, or send like a goon to do it or something. You know what I mean? So getting to the actual plot, because we're already 10 minutes into this video. I haven't still got the plot yet. By the way, there will be spoilers past this point. Yeah, so that's the problem. I mean, all of the actors do really well. It's just the actual movie itself is like mediocre, you know, and it's basically, it comes down to, you know, there's a trope called too right to explain, I think is what it is. And what it comes down to is when you get one guy who's like, you know, there's a conflict, and the conflict would be resolved if they would just talk to each other, but they don't, like, you know, but each person is too right to actually have to explain themselves, and then that's why they end up fighting. And that's exactly what happens here. I mean, long story short, Lex Luthor manipulates Batman into fighting Superman in the end, you know, and then Doomsday shows up at the end, and then they have to all team up to fight Doomsday. And it's just very like, meh, you know, like, and I mean, the thing is, it's a superhero movie, so there's only so many plots that you can have in a superhero movie, you know. And this is one of them that they use in the comics a lot, this general plot. But still, it's just kind of like, you know, like there's a lot of build-up for something that's entirely predictable. So the actual fight between Superman and Batman is actually really good. But there's a couple of, like, you know, plot holes in it. Like, for example, you know, half the movie is about Batman trying to get a piece of kryptonite that shows up, which somehow he like figures out that it like kills Superman, even though like there's an experiment at the beginning where they explain that, oh, it weakens Kryptonian cells. And then, but he already knows about it. Like, how does he know? You never find out, you know, like he steals this information from Lex Luthor, but, you know, doesn't actually, like, it seems like he already knows, right? Then he gets the kryptonite and he makes this spear out of it, you know. So there's actually a scene which is kind of reminiscent of 300, where he like cuts Superman's cheek and goes, "You're not a god," you know, just like at the end of 300, where like Leonidas throws the spear and messes up the king of the Persians. You know, and it just seems like if you really wanted to kill Superman, like, you just make a bullet out of it. Like earlier in the fight, there's a homage actually to the first Superman movie, where he walks in like this, and a bunch of machine guns come out and start shooting him. And that's right out of the first Superman movie. There's a corresponding scene of that, you know. And it's like, well, if you wanted to just kill him, just make a bullet out of kryptonite and put it in one of those machine guns and just shoot his ass with it. You know what I mean? Like, instead he like decides that he's gonna like, he makes gas, kryptonite gas out of it, and he shoots him with gas grenades. You know, because the fight starts and Superman just pushes him, and then he like flies 500 feet and gets all fucked up, and then he shoots him with his gas grenade, and then weakens him, and then Batman just beats the crap out of him, and you're like, and that's another part where you're just like, ugh, like he just fucking like, just like beats the shit out of him, and then suddenly his power comes back, and then he's like trying to, there's a part where he punches him, and like it's all clunk, right? And so you go, okay, all right, so he had his play. Then he does it again, and you're sort of like, well, wait a minute, you just, you know, so now Superman, remember, Superman has like, can move at the speed of sound and all this other shit. And he allows himself to get shot again with these gas pellets that he knows are gonna like fuck him up. And you're just like, what? Like, how come he just wouldn't just, you know, he came back, he realizes Superman has the ability to kill him. How come he just wouldn't laser his head off or some shit? I don't know. Right, because at this point in the movie, he has to kill Batman in order to save his mother, because Lex Luthor, kidnaps his mom. Speaking of which, so Batman beats him and he's gonna stab him, right? And then the way that they like get them to be friends is that Superman goes save Martha, and it just happens to be that Martha is also Batman's mother's name, and that's all he has to say, and then that's just like suddenly Batman is his friend. It's like, he's like, don't do it, save Martha. What? Why did you say that name? 5 seconds later, they're best friends. It's like, you were just gonna kill him a second ago. Now it's like, oh, all it takes is that your parents have the same fucking like first name, and now we're like teaming up. That doesn't make any fucking sense. There's some other things that are just like, there's plot holes like that through the whole movie. Lois Lane is in Afghanistan or some shit talking to a terrorist, gets held hostage. Superman can hear her from half a world away, shows up and saves her, but he can't hear his mother getting kidnapped. That doesn't make any sense. In fact, Lois gets pushed off a building and Superman saves her, but he can't hear his mother get kidnapped. I don't know. There's another part, so Lois takes the spear and throws it in this flooded stairwell, and then realizes that she needs to go kill fucking Doomsday. Goes to go get it. Superman saves her again, like the third time in this fucking movie that he saves her. Then he goes down to get the spear, but she hasn't told him that the spear is there, right? And at this point, how does he know that? I mean, it's like, so what, did you just read her mind or some shit? I mean, it's very, there's little plot holes like that if they would just would have had 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, they could have opened it all up. I mean, it's very kind of like, there's just shit like that where it just seems like they cut things out to cut down on running time, but instead of cutting out the fucking dream sequences, right, they cut out lines of dialogue that would explain things. Like, for example, and that's another thing, dream sequences. There's 6 dream sequences in this movie. One of them is some guy, while Bruce Wayne is sleeping, some guy comes from the future and says, you're right, which I think is that supposed to be the Flash coming from the future. They don't really say who it is. I mean, it doesn't look like the Flash, unless they've changed the Flash's outfit. It actually looks to me like Adam Strange is what it looked like. But, and it's like, so he's dreaming, and then he has another dream sequence, which is admittedly kind of awesome, where Superman is taking over the Earth, and he's got parademons behind him and all this other shit. And it's like, it's good. I mean, the dream sequences are okay, but it's like, he just seems to overly rely on them. I'm not kidding, there's at least 3 of them in this movie. In fact, there's more. Like, Superman has one too, where he's talking to his, getting advice from his dead father that's just unnecessary. It's like, how about you cut some of that shit out, and then you keep some of the other dialogue that explains. So Zack Snyder, is a very visual director. There's lots of, there's 2 or 3 little Easter eggs that I was able to see. I bet there's probably more, where they're panels from comic books that, he's recreated. And I actually think that kind of stuff is really cool. One where he's over the houses where, people are flooding, and then there's another one where, God, I can't remember. It was there's 3 or 4 instances. There's one where he's the gun that's shooting Bruce Wayne's mother breaks the pearls. That's right out of Dark Knight Returns. So that's very, the movie looks great. It's just, it doesn't flow together very well because it seems like key pieces of dialogue are missing, right? And it just would have gone a lot better if they just would have taken more care to link all that together. The end battle between our heroes and Doomsday, right, is well done. I think Doomsday is a little big, which I'm not sure if he's that big in the New 52 comics or not, but back in the 90s he was more like Incredible Hulk sized, and then here he's they're fighting King Kong, And it's, it's really good. I mean, Batman would get smoked in an instant, but, he manages to get away, and it's mainly Wonder Woman fighting him through the whole thing, which she just fucking rules, cuts off one of his arms and shit. And then, and it ends with, major spoiler here, and it ends with the death of Superman, which, okay, I mean, I know that was a plot line from the comics and stuff, but it's, here, I think it's a little premature. I mean, this is only the second movie, and there really isn't that emotional attachment yet to Superman. Nobody knows who he is. You know, one of the things that made that such a big deal is that, like I said before, Superman is the leader of the DC universe. You know, he's basically like Captain America in DC. He's, everybody looks up to him, shit like that, right? He's the hero that other heroes say that, of other heroes, like, you're my hero, right? And then, so when he dies, there's like a lot of emotional impact. People don't know what they're gonna do, like other Supermen come to kind of fill his role because the world needs a Superman and shit like that. Well, here it's just sort of like nobody knows who he is yet. They're not even friends yet. In fact, they were just trying to like kill each other, and now all of a sudden he's dead. It doesn't have the emotional impact. It's like, it seems like they should have saved this for like movie number 4 or something, you know what I mean, in the series. But oh well, so I guess but he'll come back. I mean, obviously, no one ever really dies in comics, so, and plus they basically just show you at the very end, yeah, he's gonna come back, so obviously he is. But I don't know, it just seems sort of like this movie, it seems like they're rushing things along, like they're just rushing all the plot just to get it out there on time so that they can like compete with the Avengers and shit. And it just seems like if they would just take a little bit more time to write their movies and make them, draw it out a little, give like the viewer some emotional investment in it before you take it all away, it would work a lot better. So I don't know. I mean, I think as it is, the movie's, an improvement. It's better than Man of Steel. I think it's definitely better than fucking Green Lantern, right? I mean, just looking at the recent DC, recent things we've gotten from DC, I would say it's up there with, Dark Knight Rises probably, but it's still very, I don't know. I think what they need to do is they need to stop making it so damn gritty. Because that's what they're doing. They're going with the Dark Knight formula where everything's got to be gritty and realistic. Well, you can't have like flying people with eye lasers and giant monsters and shit and make things realistic. It's not realistic. So don't go with it. Make it more comic booky, right? And that's what makes the Marvel movies so good, is that they're somewhat realistic, but at the same time they're not afraid to explore fantastical stuff. With aliens and fucking talking ducks and shit. So go with it, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I mean, it's not bad, and I'll probably watch it again when it comes out on Blu-ray or whatever, I'm definitely gonna watch it again. It's just, I don't know, I think it's mediocre, and that's what I would give it, like, 3 out of 5 stars or some shit like that. I'd give it a C, like if I was grading a paper, which means, it's passing, it's just not anything special. And, you want Superman Batman should be special, it should be an A+, and you go into this movie, after fucking 2 years of hype and, toys and all this other stuff, people wearing the t-shirts even before it comes out, and you hyped it so much that you want it to be the best thing since fucking sliced bread, and it's like, no, it's just bread. So, anyway, adios, folks.